Shabbat Shalom, and this is 10 Minutes of Torah. Not the 12th day of the counting of the Omer, that would be Thursday night and Friday. And not the 14th day of the counting of the Omer, that would be after Shabbat, Saturday night and Sunday, but 10 minutes of Torah. And, there's a lot to say just to catch us up to where we are now, because, of course, the last two Shabbatot, or two, not Shabbatot really, but two times of reading Torah have not been in the regular cycle, but been about Pesach. Two Shabbatot ago, we did indeed read in the regular cycle, but then that was immediately followed by Pesach. Well, we now return to the regular cycle of the Torah readings, and we are in the third Torah portion of the book of Leviticus, and it is called Shmini, which means the eighth, right? Like Shmini Atzeret is a word that certainly we know, and so it is a fascinating Torah portion. I think say that almost every week. And Shmini, on the eighth day, what happens is that Moses and Aaron and the Kohanim, and especially Aaron and the other Kohanim, they're going to be, there's a ceremony that is going to indicate that they are they're now initiated. They are now made a certain way to be acceptable to God. Whatever you want to call it, they begin their service to God. And there's this whole ceremony on the eighth day. That's part one. Part two follows a very really fascinating section of the Torah that we still struggle today to understand what is it all about, and that is the sons of Aaron, two of the sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu. They go and offer their own sacrifices, and these are called sacrifices which are zar, which are strange, which we're not sure what that word exactly means. But whatever they did, it was so abhorrent, not just inappropriate, abhorrent, that they are killed on the spot. Fascinating question as to what is really going on there. I don't think, again, we know exactly what is happening, but the story of Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aaron. That then is followed immediately. You have this dramatic story. There's some then laws about how priests, how Kohen should act, but then about the laws of kashrut. Interesting to try to draw some kind of thematic concept in this between the initiation of Aaron as the Kohen Gadol, to the difficult death of the sons of Aaron, and then to the laws of kashrut. Well, good thing to think about over Shabbat. What is the common thread? But that is not what I'm going to talk about today, because this past Shabbat, of course, as those of you who tune in to 10 Minutes of Torah know, this past Shabbat I was broadcasting from Israel, and I have just now returned after Pesach to the United States. So while there is so much to say about this week's Torah portion, that's part of the beauty of reading the same portion every year. If we don't get to it this year, we will hopefully get to it next year. And instead of talking directly about this week's parashah, although I will make a bit of a reference, I want to really say more about what is going on, what is fascinating still and difficult in Israel. You know, in Israel, I found that there is still tremendous mourning going on, much more so than the Jewish community in America over what happened on October 7th. Now, it's not that we care any less, but it affects our daily lives so much less because we live in a society where we're a minority. And so there's so many other things going on. But of course, in Israel, the majority, that's what Israel is, the majority are Jews. And so what happened to the Jews is a constant, it's constantly there. And so you have this sense still being in Israel of a real sadness and a real despair almost concerning the hostages. Great joy every time one has been let out, and let us hope that current negotiations will bring more of them out, but also despair because there are still many hostages that are still there, and of course the ones who are alive are the ones we in particular want to get them all out, but to get the ones who are still alive out as quickly as possible. So that is certainly in the air of Israel. At the same time, I was able to experience what I love about Israel, and in spite of this feeling of sadness or despair over the hostages, and that is the liveliness, the life of Israeli society. It's so interesting, you get a picture often in the press of Israelis who are either ultra religious or they are completely secular, and I just find it so fascinating because in the area where I was staying in Jerusalem, you see so many different expressions of Judaism and throughout the country too. And it's just a part of the beauty of being in a place like Israel. So, for example, nearby was a synagogue that members of my family belong to. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law is a very well-known Reform synagogue. Interestingly, of course, the Reform in Israel is a lot more traditional, and probably many of us would be comfortable there. I've actually been there, of course, many times myself, but it is called Kol HaNeshama. So I saw that. You see walking around, of course, Jews from so many different places and countries and their own religious expression. Hasidim, of course, with payas. You see Jews who are in search of some kind of compromise, if you will, between modernity, being modern, and at the same time, as much as possible, adhering to halakha. So I saw a synagogue of people who were struggling with exactly that issue. Seeing Jews of all different types, that's a part of the beauty of being in Israel. So amidst this great sadness, you just seeing people who you knew came from so many different places. You hear French all the time, of course. You hear English. You hear Jews from countries of the Middle East. So the beauty of a people so different and yet with so many important things that we have in common, that's always so striking when I'm in Israel. Because in spite of all these differences, different religious outlook or different background in terms of where one comes from, besides all of that, what we share is this great text of the Torah and the idea that the land of Israel is a holy land that is a great part of our history. And to have that kind of disparate people as one group based on the same text, based on the same Torah we read each week, that is really, I think, a lot of what Israel is all about. And I would bring it back then to the Torah portion, because I mentioned that Torah portion talks about the death of the two sons of Aaron. And yet at the same time, surrounding that is Jewish life. In this case, kashrut, being kosher. It's the continued sacrifice, if you will, of Aaron and the Kohanim to indicate who they are. A continuation of life in the midst of difficulties, in the midst of the sadness. Jewish life. What is more Jewish than the laws of kashrut? So this has been 10 minutes of Torah, thinking really more about Israel, but also not the 12th day of the counting of the Omer, nor the 14th day, and I won't tell you which day it is, but you're going to figure out which day Shabbat is. But this has been 10 minutes of Torah. Shabbat Shalom, and I think we can say, Am Yisrael Chai.